Alistair Sparks, the former editor of the Rand Daily Mail, who died in September 2016, aged 83, was a key opponent of the apartheid state and a constant thorn in the government's side. Sparks suffered a heart attack after spending 12 days in the Morningside Clinic for the treatment of an infection. He was the editor of the Rand Daily Mail, and he authored a number of books, including the internationally acclaimed Tomorrow is Another Country. His son Michael wrote, after his death, that it was a real surprise for me when I landed in London to see the message that his heart had stopped. And despite a valiant effort at resuscitation by the medical staff, they were just completely unable to restart it. Sparks was the editor of the Rand Daily Mail when it broke the so-called Muldergate story in the late 1970s. He was born in Cathcart in the Eastern Cape in 1933, and he began to work as a reporter in 1951. Sparks, of course, was a Nieman Fellow at Harvard University and the South African correspondent for a number of international publications, including the Washington Post and The Economist. His four sons, Michael, Simon, Andrew, and Julian, spent his last days with him. Now, I remember him very well from my days at First National Bank. These were the days of Chris Ball and, of course, his famous fight with P.V. Botha, who was the president in those days. My boss, the great Jimmy Mackenzie, would often invite Alistair for lunch at the bank. And I knew that there was something very special about him. He was harassed by the apartheid government. His phone was always tapped. The Bureau of State Security were constantly making life difficult for him. It was often suggested to him that he should simply chuck it all in, emigrate, and find himself a job as the editor of a proper international newspaper. But Alistair would simply laugh, telling us that the greatest gift that we have to give is the promise of fidelity. The promise that we will keep trying, that we won't walk away simply because we've become hurt, or because we feel unwanted or not properly valued. And it was then that I understood that he was a great man, because he was true and he was faithful. He believed in fidelity, which at the end of the day is a testimony to a life that is well lived. If at your funeral someone says that of you, then you have lived your life well. Even if there have been many times in your life when things weren't going well. And my friends, this is what faith means. To be full of faith means precisely to be faithful. And that's much more than just a neat play on words. In the end, faith is not simply the good, secure feeling that God exists. Faith is a commitment to a way of living beyond good and secure feelings. To have faith means to sometimes live our lives independent of whatever feelings may come. Ultimately, faith is not in the head or in the heart, but in the action of a sustained commitment. Faith is fidelity. Nothing more, nothing less. And perhaps more than anything else, that gift is what is needed today in our marriages, in our families, in our churches, and in our world in general. The greatest gift that we can give to those around us is the promise of fidelity. The simple promise to stick around, to not leave when things get difficult, to not walk away because we feel disappointed or hurt, to stay even when we don't feel wanted or valued, to stay even when our personalities and our visions clash, to stay through thick and thin. Too often what happens is that in our commitments we subtly blackmail each other. We commit ourselves inside of family, church, community and friendship, but with the unspoken condition, I will stay with you as long as you don't seriously disappoint or hurt me. But if you do, I will move on. No marriage, no family, no friendship, no church, no community can survive on this premise, because it is simply impossible to live or work with each other for any length of time without simply or seriously disappointing and hurting each other. Inside of any relationship, marriage, family, friendship, church, community, even a collegial relationship in the workplace, we can never promise that we won't disappoint others, that we won't ever mess up, that our personalities won't clash, that we won't sometimes hurt others through insensitivity, selfishness, weakness. We can't promise that we will always be good. We can only promise that we will always be there. And in the end, that promise is enough. Because if we stay and don't blackmail each other by walking away when there is a disappointment or a hurt, then the disappointments and the hurts can be worked through and redeemed by a faith and a love that stays for the long haul. When there is fidelity within a relationship, eventually the hurts and the misunderstandings wash clean, and even bitterness turns to love. Many is the man or the woman who, on celebrating the anniversary of a marriage or the commitment to religious life, the priesthood or friendship or work at a certain job, looks back and no longer feels the countless hurts, rejections, misunderstandings, and bitter moments that were also part of the journey. These are washed clean by something deeper that has grown up because of fidelity, namely trust and respect. You sometimes see this wonderfully in the mutual, begrudging respect that eventually develops between two people who, while both sincere and committed, are for years at odds because of differences in personality, politics, religion, or even history. The simple fact of having to deal with each other over many years eventually leads to a rich understanding and a respect beyond differences. And my friends, this also holds true for prayer. All of the great spiritual writers give only one ultimate rule for prayer. And that rule has nothing to do with method, with style, with content. That rule is simply this: show up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop going to prayer. As long as you persevere in going to prayer, eventually God will break through. Don't ever stop trying. That's true for all of our relationships. The greatest gift that we have to give is the promise of fidelity. The promise that we will keep trying, that we won't walk away simply because we've become hurt, or because we feel unwanted or not properly valued. Brothers and sisters, we are all weak, wounded, sinful, and easily hurt. Inside of our marriages, our families, our churches, our friendships, and our places of work, we cannot promise that we won't disappoint one another, and worse still, that we won't hurt each other. But we can promise that we won't walk away because of disappointment and hurt. And that's all we can promise. And that is enough. God bless you.